Our topic today is digital signage, and I'm just going to turn it over to Steve Toback from OIT, who's done a great job of pulling this together. It was his excellent suggestion. All yours, Steve. Thank you.
So that one day at Duke thing, that'd be a great thing to put out on our digital signage system. So I'll segue there if it existed yet. So hello, yes, I'm Steve Toback. I'm from OIT. My team at Duke, we're over in the American Tobacco campus. We're responsible for recording and streaming services, so Duke Capture and Duke Stream, and we run the MPS lab over on West Campus, and we do AV consultation. And we just launched the new Duke Digital Signage program last January, so just a couple of months ago, and people are starting to get up to speed. We've had some great training sessions, but what we're going to do today for the communicators is really kind of talk about the options that you could have. We have some examples here, and I'm an IT, remember, so I did these examples, and these examples are not to showcase design in any way, although they're not horrible, but I don't get offended. But it's really to show you what's possible and to have you guys start thinking about all the great content we can create on the system. So first of all, we're going to start talking about, I did a presentation on digital signage at ITAC about a year or so ago, and everybody thought I was talking about digital signatures. So we're not talking about digital signatures. What we're talking about is essentially a bulletin board that you plug into the wall. It's an electronic bulletin board. It's a way to do digital flyers at its core, right? So a lot of people around campus have their own systems to do their own digital flyers. And what's happened organically is that people would develop it, then that person would leave, and then nobody would update it, and it was difficult. And then if you wanted to share things with other people, you couldn't do that. So we've been investigating for a long time on getting a program. Tim Bounds in Student Affairs decided to move ahead last April, which really said, okay, well, if we're going to do it in 1 or 2 or 3, let's try to get a centralized solution. So besides digital flyers, there's going to be some things flashing by here. You can see video and audio can also be played. You could use it, Scott Wells is thinking maybe for overflow. The thing that you're seeing here is actually a YouTube video embedded in here. And YouTube is really cool in that you can embed a YouTube playlist so that when you update your YouTube playlist, your signs are automatically updated. You won't have to go and update the content. We're going to talk a lot more about dynamic content, leveraging things that you're already changing to make the signs better and not have to continue to do that. So dynamic news is another thing. RSS feeds, XML, even HTML. There should be a sample coming up here of the bus system. And the bus system, that's literally just an HTML page that's fully functional. If you put that onto an interactive screen, you've got an interactive bus kiosk just reusing the HTML content that you've already created. Wayfinding is another big. We just finished a really great session about wayfinding, putting a kiosk. There's lots of ideas for doing interactive wayfinding that you can walk up to things, but there's also non-interactive wayfinding, which is really a fancy way for saying a directory, but there's cool things that you can do with animations on that. These can be fully interactive, so you can buy screens with touch screens on them and build applications. People have been talking about for the health system or even Career Center doing a check-in kiosk system, being able to select videos. Fred and I had talked for a while about building something at the chapel where somebody could interact with it. This has all that functionality built into the system. And then last but certainly not least, as an add-on or adjunct to the emergency system, once you sign up for the Duke digital signage system, your signs will get automatically subscribed to the Duke Alert system. And I'm going to ask Paul to say a little bit more about that toward the end. But basically what will happen is if there's an alert targeted to your sign area, it will automatically revert to the emergency information, whatever it may be. And then as soon as the emergency is over, it'll automatically revert back to your normal content. So it's not really being looked at as a primary source like the text alert system, but it's going to be another way that the emergency system can communicate. And because all the screens are networked, we'll be able to focus on a building or a campus or a region for the emergency stuff. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So again, what we talked about is the difference in this system is that there's a centralized server that OIT runs. And what's good about that is once you do your stuff on the centralized server, you can deploy to one sign or you can deploy to many signs. And you can have the same message just by basically clicking and dragging. You're sending that information out to signs. And one of the other things that we're going to talk about with David a little bit later at the end, how are we going to share that? How are we going to build our content so it's compatible with all the different signs that we're creating, and then how do we say, hey, I've got this event I think would be great for the School of Engineering, can you deploy the sign there and communicate and talk with all that. So we're really talking about the foundation, because once you've got it multiple signs, then you could also, if you've got different areas around campus, you know, okay, I want this in the Allen building and I want this at the ATC because this is going to do that. So you'll be able to deploy based on region or based on department. Okay, and this should be interactive. If there are any questions, I'm going to kind of run through things a little bit quickly. We are going to be running training sessions every other week or so. Jack Dardan is the project service manager, and he's out on paternity leave. He had a beautiful baby boy. He'll be back on April 2nd. I'll also introduce real quick, Teresa Jennings is a new media engineer on my team. Teresa's been doing a lot of work on the program as well. So we'll have those getting started, which will be using the templates and creating contents like every other week. So I think it'd be easier to look at this example of a sign is one of the templates that we've done, and it's basically the simplest thing that you can do. It's just some content, which could be a PowerPoint slide, a logo, a weather widget, and a stream and date and time. But we're going to go ahead and take a look at a little bit more complicated, just to kind of, again, show you all the different things that you can do. So even though this is one sign, it's actually set up with multiple regions. Each of these regions contains what Four Winds calls an application. And the applications can be any number of things. We're going to go through those content types just to give you an idea and about what's going on here. So behind it are these basic blocks. So the first thing that you do, much like when you're building a web page, right? You do your information architecture. With these signs, it's the same thing. You create these blocks to say, okay, I'm going to have a block of information here, a block of information there, and then it's really just about taking those blocks and filling it with content. Okay, this is a look into what the application looks like called Content Manager, and this is really used by the people that are designing your templates. We're going to talk about the different roles that people will have if you're using the signage system. Updating content, you don't necessarily have to go in here, but just to kind of give you an idea, each of these little yellow boxes correspond to the blank boxes on the sign, and then they're filled with all these different content types. And then you can have multiple content types within a single region. Like if you look at the sign when it gets to that multi-port, you may notice that it goes from Durham weather to Beaufort weather, and it goes back and forth because both of those weather things are in that weather block, and it just transitions every 5 seconds between the two. So you can put multiple things within a region, but this gives you the flexibility. That looks kind of scary, but it's really not that hard. So the easiest thing content we're going to talk about first is slide content. And this can be the quickest way. Most of you that are, if you have digital signage, you're already creating slides. Most people are using PowerPoint. And PowerPoint works natively for the system. So basically, you could keep a PowerPoint deck out on our shared NAS and be updating that slide, deleting slides, adding slides to it, and saving it, and then your sign's going to get updated automatically. You're not going to have to do anything. You won't have to touch anything. You just basically save over that. And that's really the easiest way, and that's what we're recommending people that get started. When you want to go to the next step, there's a really cool feature called the content feed. And what the content feed allows you to do, it allows you to manage those slides as separate images. And those are better because you can set individual expirations. Let's say when the softball game is coming up, we want it to stop showing automatically on the day of the softball game. Using individual images, you can set expiration dates individually for each image. And then if somebody shares an image with you, you don't have to bring it into your PowerPoint. You just basically drop it in the folder. So here's an example of the folder of what you're watching right now, just a bunch of JPEGs in there. But also in there is an Excel spreadsheet. And in this Excel spreadsheet is just basically a list of file names. And then this spreadsheet's available. We developed this in-house, and you can modify it, but you've noticed that there's a duration, a start, and an end date. So our HR folks at OIT are going to use this to basically throw something into that folder, type in the file name, type start and end date, and hit save. And again, they never have to go into the application. The application will refresh every 5 minutes or so and pull in those new JPEGs automatically. And again, when they want to delete something, they would just delete it from the Excel spreadsheet and delete the file off of there. So 2 ways. Again, start really simple with your PowerPoint, and then you can get into content feeds if you want to be a little bit more advanced. But that's going to be the bulk of your content, especially when you're starting. Any questions on that? Yeah. Yes. Yes. The question is, can you use screens made in Photoshop? You can use anything that creates either a JPEG or a PNG. You'll actually do PDF files as well. So if you had Illustrator and wanted to do that, but yeah, most of the graphic image files. We'll talk about that a little later too. So the next type of data is really exciting. It's called live data. And live data can be really any sort of data source. Typically, it's like an XML feed, but it can be as simple as an Excel file or as complicated as using a SQL call to an actual database. And all it does is it brings the data into your screen. And if you notice the OIT birthdays that are here, those are I can't tell what's playing there. Okay, our birthdays. Okay. So there's actually two in there off the same spreadsheet. One's birthdays and one's continuous service dates. The only thing that the OIT folks do is when a new hire comes in, they go into this spreadsheet. It's a little hard to see on the screen here, but the first 4 columns are white. That's all that they enter. They'll delete a row if somebody leaves, or they'll enter a new row. Then I did all the Excel geekiness out there to kind of reformat the data. And notice date of birth is all the 13th. 2013. We don't have a lot of young people working in OIT, but that's because it's public knowledge and we don't want people's birthdays. That's protected information. So if you are going to do something with people's birthdays, you really only care about the month and the day anyway. So I tell them just enter it as the current year, and then that way there's no issues at all. So then it goes out and parses all that, and then the real magic happens inside of the application. And again, this is something that your technology folks, your web developers, or 4Winds Interactive would do for you to help develop this, or you can use the templates that we've already created. But essentially what it does is, if you look up on top there, I can see right here. If you look up on top, you can see the field names are all blocks there. You just pull it down, and then you format it. I want it to be white, and I want it to be bold. And then I pulled in this really awesome clip art for a birthday cake. And so the birthday info just comes in, and then it rotates through if there's more than one. And the cool thing is I have that date of birth month. So what happens automatically is on April 1st, I don't have to do anything. I have one spreadsheet with everybody's name in it, and it knows I'm only going to pick the March people. Then on April 1st, I'm only going to pick the April people because that Excel calculation field changes. So through the use of filtering and sorting, it's really powerful. And the HR folks are like, I just got to update a spreadsheet that I update anyway, and now I have all this information on my signs, and it changes every month. You don't ever have to re-update it, except to add people. So live data is really, really neat. Any questions on live data? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. If you've got database developers, the best thing to do is put them in touch with us. We could point them to the documentation. We're planning an advanced class the end of next month, the end of April, and that could be something if there's enough people that are interested in SQL, we could have it as part of that as well. But yes, it'll do SQL queries or XML or any of that stuff. Any other questions on live data? Okay, cool. So RSS. RSS is everywhere, and it's super easy. It's basically you just take your favorite RSS feed, and what we did here was I just created a still graphic for the Duke Today News branding, and that's available. We also have a shared folder where a lot of these graphics, Duke Web Services did some really neat backgrounds that you'll see on here. They're out in the shared folder. Once you sign on, you'll have access to this. But it basically just comes across as a ticker. And when you pull it in, you can style it. You just say, I want it to be this font, not bold, right, Blythe? This is before Blythe made me make it not bold. And you can change the font size. And then on the players itself, you can adjust the speed, how quickly you want it to go. But for just doing scrolling news updates, it works really, really well. Any question on RSS? Okay. So weather is a built-in module. Again, really easy to do. So you just basically type in the zip code. You see the zip code there field, and it gives you the weather. And you can do 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. And the module, the way we styled it here, we have the Duke Marine Lab, so we'd like to know what the weather's like out at the coast. But that could be any office that you have. And when the sign comes up, you'll notice, again, I just set it for 5 seconds. There's 2 pieces of media in there. It just fades between the 2 every 5 seconds. And I just set the other zip code for the other one. So really easy to do, and I actually use this because the sign's on all the time. Say, it's going to rain tomorrow, so it's actually pretty helpful. Any questions on weather? And this all comes with it. There's no extra subscription or anything. Okay. Date and time. So date and time, it seems pretty simple, but you can do some really neat stuff with it. So what we did here for OIT is we created a world clock, and all the world clock is really is a 3 date and time modules set with an offset for Greenwich Mean Time. So, we're building the campus in Kunshan, China, so I have Wuhan there time, And Kazakhstan, where Fuqua is working with a school out there, so I thought it'd be nice to spell Kazakhstan correctly and put that out there. So we created a world clock just by using 3 different instances of that date-time module. Other things you'll notice on the multiport is I have it, you see the time large, and then you see the day and date kind of changing. Those are 3 time modules. So rather than trying to stretch everything out, you'll see it's Thursday, and then it's March 31st, and then the time's always there. So you start thinking about how you can creatively use multiple modules showing the same information but styled differently. There's probably about 50 different ways that you can display the time, all different ways, and you can use snippets of those to rearrange it on your sign and lay it out however you'd like. The only thing it doesn't do that they said they're going to do, it doesn't take into account daylight savings time. So actually I have to go in and add another hour to Kazakhstan and Wuhan, or try to make them stop daylight savings time. Any other questions on time, daytime? Okay, great. So static images, again, we talked about this. Essentially, the logo is just a PNG file with transparency so that you can see the background behind it. These regions that these things are going in, they can be transparent, they can have a solid color, they can have an image behind them, or they could be, or you can make them opaque from 0 to 255 to kind of make it wash out a little bit. If you see the events calendar on the video sample, that's got a white background and about 50% transparency just to kind of block out the complex background that's on it. So you get a lot of flexibility there. But any major, JPEG, PNG file, anything on the web. So now that you're all so excited, I can feel the energy. How do you get started? Well, it's basically 3 things that you need to get started. You need the people. You need to identify who's going to be working on this. Because again, you think of this like it's another web, right? You got a web people that are in charge of web. You need the people that are going to be responsible for your signs. And it could be the same people, right? So what kind of people do you need? Well, you need you need somebody who's going to install your signs, right? It could be an integrator, it could be your staff, it could be Duke Facilities, or you could do something like this where it's just sitting, hopefully a stronger table than this, but it could just be sitting on a table. You could use a smaller monitor on a counter, but you need somebody that's going to install your equipment for you. Usually people will, we'll talk a little bit about the hardware, is hang their sign on the wall, then you got to get the people that are going to do that for you. Then you need somebody who's going to act as your technical administrator. And again, this could be your local IT staff or somebody in your department that's IT that handles your computers. Or we have a program now, if you buy, and we run these on Mac Minis, we'll talk about in a second, you can buy it as a package from the Duke Computer Store with CDSS, which is a group within OIT that does computer support. You could buy it with their annual support, which is it's $360 a year. But for that, they will install all the software updates. They will install all the Windows updates for you. They will get the computer from the store, configure it, install all the software, and then give you something that you literally just have to plug in. So the cost for all of that, including the Mac Mini, I think it's 4 years of Duke Computer warranty, and 1 year of the first year of CDSS support is $1,000. And that gets you the whole bundle, and they basically hand you a fully done sign. And then after that, it'll be $360 a year. The software is completely free. There's no licensing fee. We bought a site license for the university, so you can deploy as many signs as you want at no charge. Yes, of course. Great question. Is it 1 Mac Mini per sign? Yes and no. It could be. We're actually deploying if you want different information on each sign, then you need 1 Mac Mini per sign. At OIT, we're actually doing 2 Mac Minis for 4 signs. And you can buy a HDMI splitter that comes out the back of the Mac Mini to send it to 2 things, and then they make HDMI to Cat5 converters. And then you can send that HDMI signal to another sign somewhere else and just plug it in and you're done. And the HDMI converters, the splitters are $30, and these Cat5s, depending on how far you want to go, are anywhere from $50 to $300, but it's still cheaper than buying another computer. So a lot of folks are doing that. But there's a lot of great integrators out there, Contact, Whitlock, all those guys would know, and you'd be able to talk with them about, how do I distribute this out to multiple sites? Good question, thank you. Generally, the computers, it doesn't have to be. You can get one of those HDMI to Cat5 converters and put it remotely, but generally what people do is they will mount it behind the computer, and we recommend some mounts that you can lock the Mac Mini into the back of the computer so that people can't steal it. But normally what people do is they'll just mount it behind the computer in that same location. We're going to talk a little bit more about the hardware in just a couple of minutes. Any other questions about your technical administrator? Okay. So the next person you need is a signed developer. And this is optional. And the reason it's optional is, again, you could take our templates, change the graphics that live in it, and get going today. I mean, you don't need a signed developer. However, if you want to build your own templates, if you want to create your own interactive applications, you could either get your folks training. Again, we're doing some basic training and then advanced training as we go. Or you can hire 4Winds Interactive to do your development for you. Right now, the Duke Technology Center has hired 4Winds to do some really cool interactive kiosks for their new location. So they're going to have touch panels, and you'll be able to go in and find out information about the different computers. In the future, Duke Web Services may take on this role as well, doing some custom development for folks. But it's fun. It's got its own kind of programming language to it. So if you've got somebody that knows any sort of programming or scripting, they can generally do a lot of stuff, and it takes variables. It's very, 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 very flexible. So the last thing is you guys, content creators. You need somebody that's going to be creating the content. And again, you're going to be reusing content, but it could be like, I need to design a logo, or I want my own background, or I'm going to do a PowerPoint template. One of the things we're talking about is everybody should be doing their templates in a 16:9 aspect ratio at 1920 by 1080. That's a suggestion, right? And that'll look really good full screen on a monitor. And that way, if everybody builds their regions to be 16:9, then if you give your slide to somebody else, it's going to look good in their sign as well. And that's just kind of the start of the conversation about sharing that we're going to be doing. But so as a content creator, you're going to be programming the sign, you're going to develop things like that birthday thing, or you're going to be doing the slides, or figuring out ways, maybe through CSS, you have a website today that you could just maybe use CSS to style a different URL to make it fit better in the sign, and then you just point the sign at that second URL that's basically hidden to anybody, and now you're creating content, but it's going to both places, and you don't have to update it. So any ideas that you have, especially as we're starting right now, I encourage you to, our email address is dds-program@duke.edu, and that will go to everybody that's currently a sign administrator. And if you send to that list, then you can say, I'm thinking of doing this, and we're hoping somebody say, hey, I already did that. You can have my template, and you can change it. We'll get a community going, and people can share stuff. Great. So any other questions on the people that you need to get started? Okay. So the hardware. We talked a little bit about this. So we're recommending the Mac Mini, and it's a little bit more expensive than the smaller PCs that are out there, but it's much more powerful than those. I'm running right now on an older Mac Mini because this is it's a test symbol, but the new ones, the aluminum ones, work really, really well. But the thing about the Mac Mini is you're actually running Windows on it. You don't boot it into the Mac at all. It's only running Windows. And like I said, if you buy the CDSS support, they will install it for you. I know it's sacrilege running Windows on a Mac, but it actually runs better than most Windows PCs when you do it that way. And they're very small, and they're easy to secure, and they're quiet, so they're really the perfect platform for this. If you have other computers that you want to use, you're more than welcome to use it. The other good thing about our arrangement with 4Winds Interactive is any person that's on the system can call 4Winds directly for support. And they're really good, and they're really responsive. They are in Colorado, so they're a little bit time shifted, but it's not like Duke Capture. We have very limited. It all comes through us. You can talk to them. They have minimum specs for their sign player, so if you've got a PC that meets their specs and you want to install the OS and all the applications on it, we have all the information on how to do that, and you're more than welcome to do it yourself. So there's no requirement to buy our Mac Mini or to buy a Mac Mini at all. It's just what we're recommending. Okay. So obviously then you need a screen. And I get asked every day, well, Steve, where's your list of recommended screens that you have? And we're not going to do that. And the reason we're not going to do that, there's so many options out there and so many choices. We had one. Cisco made a Samsung monitor that was awesome, but they stopped. And we used to get those at a really good price. So we can't get those anymore. So essentially what we've done is out on our website, we do have some recommendations for interactive screens. But for regular screens, we just tell you that, you want to get something with a thin bezel, right? Like this bezel is too thick. I wouldn't want to deploy this necessarily as a sign. Professional monitors tend to have a flat, non-glossy surface, whereas the ones you get in Best Buy are going to be glossy. So that could be a reason to buy a professional monitor. Things like RS-232 controls, so you can do power management remotely. So we'll give you a list of things to look for in your monitor, but then ultimately, a professional monitor may be $6,000, and you could get the same size at Best Buy for $800. And you're like, well, if I got to replace a monitor every year, I'll just go ahead and do that if it meets your other requirements. So it's really completely up to you. We're happy to talk with you about some of your suggestions, but we can't really recommend monitors because there's too many of them. And then you need some sort of a mount. And again, the mount that you buy will really be dependent on the monitor that you buy. But we recommend ones like this that allow you to service the monitor behind it that kind of fold out there. And then, of course, you need power and you need wired Ethernet. We don't generally recommend running these on wireless. It's okay to do it if you need to, unless if you're going to be streaming like YouTube videos or other video to it, you definitely want to get it wired. But how it works is that the main server pushes all the data locally. So you're not playing content off a server unless, like I said, you're streaming video. So if you were on wireless and for some reason it couldn't get there, it couldn't get the update, it would try again and pull the data back down again. So again, if you can get wired, you'd be in better shape if you start wanting to stream video, which I think the YouTube stuff, Scott Wells shot the example that's on here for Divinity, and I think it just looks fantastic. And we're actually trying to figure out a way to enable closed captioning because you're not going to want to have audio on. So if it's closed caption, you could display the closed captioning and people can be watching your video as it's going. So I think that's going to be neat to do. So last but not least, content. We've touched on a lot of this. So we said there's really two types of content, right? There's static content, which can be made in PowerPoint or Photoshop, like we talked about. And PowerPoint obviously creates PowerPoint files, which the system will read, and Photoshop creates JPEGs. But a lot of people don't know, or maybe they do, that Photoshop actually creates JPEGs as well. And it's a really easy way to kind of lay out slides using Photoshop, even if you're going with the individual JPEG option. And that works really, really well. But the coolest thing is what we talked about before is this dynamic content, right? And so that could be an HTML site, RSS, XML. And the bus example that you see playing here, again, is that website, and it's fully interactive, like I mentioned. You could walk up to it right now with the mouse and actually operate it. So this was just I'm not sure who designed this or how we got this. I think it's outsourced, but it just works perfectly in a sign, and it took like 10 seconds to turn it into an interactive sign. So, yeah. Yes. Yep. It'll do live streaming video. Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, essentially, YouTube is that, but it could stream off of our servers as well. Yeah. If you're interested, that Todd is here. We should get together. We could do a test. And Scott, were you able to do any test streaming? Oh, okay. Cool. So just wrapping up here. What are your next steps? If you're interested in this, I suggest that you sign up for a departmental account. I apologize for that URL. I'm asking for a shortener. I didn't want to use a bit.ly one, but just go to the OIT site and search for digital signage or email that list. There's a form that you can fill out. You can either, if you know that you definitely want signs, you can put that there, or just say, hey, I just want some more info, and you come over to ATC and we could talk about what it is that you want to do. Parking and transportation is coming over next week. We're really excited about that. They've got some cool ideas for some apps. So you check out the documentation. We have recordings of almost all of the training sessions, so those can be looked at. And just experiment and have fun with it. We usually tell people try to get a small HD monitor for your desk that you can deploy to. This is a Windows-only service, but we run using remote desktop, and it works really great because you can switch to your Mac, run your Photoshop, save the file out to the file system, and then the sign automatically gets it. You just switch into Windows to use the Content Manager. So for more discussion questions for branding, Blythe and Denise in the OMSC, the Office of OMSC. Did I get that right? Right. So, yeah, right. There you go. So, did you want to say a little something about branding?
Yeah. So on the branding front, I mean, this is very similar to the process that we're in place for just working with an office on enterprise projects, especially sites in general. There are templates that already exist, of course. Whatever teams are going to do, we're working with others. You can always work with Forward's Interactive because they're.
Oh, because you're being recorded.
So you can always work with Forward's Interactive to develop a few more of these. We just kind of asked for YouTube version, don't post it out the
Okay, thanks. I put David on the spot here because I didn't, ask him to talk about sharing. Do you want to come up, say anything about sharing content? Yeah, if you can come up here, then we can get you recorded. That'd be great. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Duke wins by 12. Thank you. Jonathan and Kara right now are here. It's on Facebook. There we go. There's our crack team at work. Actually, though, a good example of how we might share things. And emergencying. Nice.
He worked with the whole thing.
Yeah. Nice.
How did the theme go?
Yeah, that's one way to describe it. So, Paul, you'll say something about that. But one thing that we hear regularly from around university, from students and others, is if you're in the law school, you'll see stuff on the monitor about the law school, or and so forth, about the sort of wherever you are, which is great and it's to be expected. But people are also, they come to Duke because they want to be part of the Duke community. So they might want to be part of this sort of group celebration about winning a tournament game, or if, times of graduation, or if we have a especially famous speaker, Condoleezza Rice or something, coming to campus. That's something that all units might want to put in, and in fact, it's part of the value of being at Duke. We don't have a system worked out yet, but we know that as we're moving ahead fairly quickly, we're going to be try to think this through as a way for us to collectively generate and share content that won't be too intrusive on anybody's time. Emergency will be different. I think that's one thing that we're going to require to be pushed, right, Paul? I don't think that's going to happen hardly ever for anything else, but we hope that you'll find that to be a valuable resource. And sort of in our mind's eye, you may want to allot 10 or 20% or whatever you think is appropriate of your screen time to big D things, that a new exhibit at the Nasher, or just whatever's going on. And so details to follow when we actually figure them out.
Approximately how many signs are out there right now?
Yeah, just under 1,000, and way under 1,000, probably like 2. So people are. So the question was how many signs are out there right now. I believe Tim has deployed 1. Tim has 2. Trinity's deployed 2. OIT has them ready to deploy. Everybody's really learning right now, so it's not very many. Yeah.
If we had something to share right now, how many? And to figure out how to get it out to folks, how many places to share?
Yeah, so now is the time to be thinking about how we're going to do it, because there really aren't a lot of places. One of the ideas, and I'm going to introduce Tim. Why don't you actually come up? I just want to introduce Tim's head of the governance team that's representing about 10 or 12 different schools and departments. Blythe's on the governance team, and Meg's on there from ONC. But one of the ideas that we talked about is maybe having a views flash form that would show you, or at least tell you, all the locations where there are. You could upload a JPEG, put a start and end date on it, and then click the signs where you wanted. Then it would go, an email would just go to those people and saying, hey, person X has asked to put this on your sign. It would be completely, voluntary system. The system itself is very sophisticated. It can do like advertising. It can give you data on how many plays you got. It can do things in different rotations. But that's really designed more for the retail market. We may want to get into that in the future. But now we're just really looking for ideas and thoughts, and even like, where do you want signs? Are there places that people share data? So I think the first wave that we're seeing right now is people learning the system, and then people replacing their existing signs. But as you're walking around as communicators saying, wow, it'd be really great if there was a sign here, and let's find out who could own that, and then make that a place where people can put stuff, just like we would put a bulletin board up somewhere. Yeah. 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 Do you want to talk about what you're doing at the Bryan Center a little bit?
Sure. So you've probably been to the Bryan Center recently and see that it's kind of a mess. But there's one screen already there. It's behind the info desk near the ticket window. So if you look at that screen, we took Steve's template, because even though he says it doesn't look that great, it's better than anything we put together. So that's up and running there. And we've just talking within student affairs recently, very recently, like yesterday, about what to do with digital signage once the building is fully renovated, around August when everything's completed. And there will be, hopefully, a number of signs in there. And obviously there'll be a lot of student affairs content and Bryan Center content. But since that's a general area where a lot of visitors go through, there would also be content from all across campus, we hope. That would also help reduce the workload on us for producing content. So that would be a good thing. So hopefully, I can't remember the number of signs in there, but it's more than 10 throughout the 3 levels of the Bryan Center. At least. Yeah.
When we talk about ideas for kind of feature content, I think this goes to sharing. What are things that we might want to deploy centrally that might be a really cost for a lot of these signs, just because, especially the visitor experience alone, making that consistent across campus for a lot of different buildings. Really want to focus on now that we have this data.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
So the question was about, can you use Events at Duke? So yeah, if you could actually upload your digital flyer to the Events at Duke, and then somebody could subscribe to that and then have it automatically pulled into their sign. That's an interesting idea. So one of the reasons for the governance group is for things like that. If these ideas come up, deciding, rather than saying, well, you're going to develop that application and you'll develop that application and you will, kind of see if we can pool everybody's money together and go back to Four Winds to maybe develop some custom apps, or prioritize it for the Events at Duke team. The Events at Duke feed is an XML feed, but we struggled with that for a little bit. We got it working through the help of Duke Web Services. It required some XSLT style sheets in order to get down into it, but once we did, it works really, really well. And Tim even figured out how to pull images out of it, but there aren't always images in it, so it'd be the kind of thing.
Screenshot a while ago.
Yeah.
But if you look at the Bryan Center display on the right side, it is pulling from Events at Duke calendar. It's showing events in the Bryan Center and at Page Auditorium, and that we just narrowed the search to those locations. But you could also search by location or by the sponsor if it's in the XML feed.
Yeah, so the system does have native integration with 25 Live and Exchange for calendaring. That said, it still has to be developed. We haven't gotten to that point yet. That was one of the reasons we picked Four Winds too, was because it had that. The Link is another place that they're very interested in being able to do that. Talking to School of Medicine, they have that new teaching and learning center. They're thinking of ways to use door signs, and you could even deploy like iPad minis as displays and use those as here's the schedule, here's who's scheduled in here now, click here to see the schedule for the rest of the day type of a thing. So it's there, but again, email us. We need enough people to say this is something that we want. We'll bring the 25 Live people in. And at a minimum, you could just do a web query and just show that on a web page, and it would be fully interactive. But there are integrations that would just take somebody finding the developers to make that work. But yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so that's Tim, and then thank you, Tim. Paul, if you want to, can you step up and just talk a little bit about emergency?
Sure.
Emergency.
I can't even say that.
I'm a poet. I'm sorry.
So, one of the things I think we've done best recently around emergency communications is the alert bar, and that wasn't something that we could do just ourselves. In most cases, it was something that we gave you a tool, and it helped people find the information where they were, because we knew they weren't all going to be sitting on the emergency site. They'd be on the library site, they'd be on the law site, they'd be on Fuqua site. They would be all over the place. And so when we activated that bar, it shows up on the website for everyone else. Thank you, Blythe, for that suggestion. And it's worked really well. So I think this falls in line in the same way. is that we know that these display boards are going to be up all over the university and the health system and other places. So that if we're all using a common system, then it allows us to reach people who we really can't reach in a lot of ways, which is visitors. So we know at any given point on our campus, at any time, we've got lots of people here who are not going to get a text message, who are not going to get an email message because they're here for the day. And so when we have these boards, it's an opportunity for us digital signs, then we have an opportunity to get in front of people when we have something coming like a 36 to 48 inch snowstorm coming. People might hear about that some other way, but tornadoes in particular, I think, are one that catch people by surprise. And so as you're thinking about this, this is a really great option for people who work and live and visit in your respective areas. And so it's a great way for us. The emergency would be one, again, that would be built into the system. You wouldn't have to do anything. We have an emergency situation. We activate that, and it takes over your screen. And it won't be for long, but usually it's only going to be in an extreme circumstance like a tornado warning where we really need people to take some action. And so there's a lower level that, with the alert bar, we have a level 1 and a level 2. If we go into a tornado watch where conditions are prevalent or ripe for the potential for the development of tornadoes, we would do that through like Duke Today, and we would encourage you to adopt like a RSS feed for Duke Today stories, and so that would show up as well. But we'd only use the emergency in cases where like we were activating the emergency website. So it's a great tool, and I hope we can get more people to kind of buy into this system rather than going off and creating their own. Any questions on emergency?
Thanks, Walt. So one thing I would mention too, if you're buying signs now, buy signs with speakers built in, because normally your content won't have anything, but we can deploy these alerts with actually audible alerts for people that may be visually impaired. So just something to think about there. And then there's other things you can do, like you can have a regular RSS feed running of something else, but have it be listening for something. And then when for the lower level alerts, when if there's possible tornado in the area, it could automatically switch over to that. And so we could help you do things like that. So conditional changes. That's all I had. If there's no other questions, I appreciate your time. No? Okay. Thank you, everybody.